All right, how many of you have ever been to a public pool? Everybody ever been public pool? Okay. Here is something I promise happens at every public pool at least once a day. At least, well, no, that's definitely happening. Somebody is peeing in the public pool at least once a day. But no, that's not what I had in mind. What I had in mind was at least once a day at any pool, you have a kid either on a diving board or right near the edge about to do something so cool. And they're going, Mommy! Mommy! Mommy, look! Mommy! Mommy! Right? And then they do their jump into the water, and then immediately they're right back. Mommy! Mommy! Right? And you know what? Like 90% of that time, mom's laying out, sunglasses on, going, yeah, I see you. Yep. Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right. Full honest moment. How many of you are the kid? Oh, for sure. For sure I was a kid. For sure I was a kid. I was like, watch me do this front flip. And then I do just like a face plant into the water. Yeah. Yeah, she's like talking to somebody, they're distracted. Oh, you feel that. If you've ever played a sport or something, you know it just works out that the moment that you do the most incredible thing, the moment you're taking the ball down, boom, right into the corner, and you look and your parents are having a conversation, you're like, come on! Right? There's the moment that you do something amazing, you're like, what? Did anybody see it? That's the moment. There's moments that you want people to show up for. You want people to see what's going on. You want people in your corner. You want them to be able to appreciate it. But I think there are moments, I've had moments, maybe you've had moments, where you needed somebody to see you. You needed somebody to show up for you. And there wasn't. You needed somebody to talk about something that was really tough for you. And when you tried to look around, there was nobody that you felt like you could talk to. Or there was a moment that you needed a friend to show up for you, and for whatever reason, you didn't feel like you had somebody there. And I think there's moments where we can kind of feel like that with God. Where we go, God, I need you to show up. Are you there? God, I need you to show up. Can you meet me? And this morning, we're starting a brand new series called In the Shadows. And so, I don't know, some of you hopefully are putting two things together and you're like, oh, we played with flashlights in the dark, in the shadows. You see what we're doing? But there are moments in our lives that feel shaded, they feel shadowy, they feel dark. It's moments where we have questions. It's moments where we're concerned, moments that we don't understand, where we're looking for God, but maybe we don't have all the right answers. And I want to talk to you this morning about a story that's in 2 Kings chapter 5. So if you brought a Bible, go to 2 Kings chapter 5. I want to do this. How many of you actually brought your Bible? Let me see. No, oh, yeah, come on. All right, if you got a Bible, love it. If you ever need to borrow a Bible in J-Box, we've got some in the back. You can grab them. But go to 2 Kings chapter 5. Now, this story is about a guy named Naaman. Say Naaman. Now, most of the Bible focuses on what country? Most of the Bible focuses on what country? What country? Israel. Good job. But this story is about a guy who's not from Israel. It's about a guy from another country. Throw up that map for us real quick. This is a country, it's not called this anymore, but at the time it was called Aram. And you could see that they are a neighbor to Israel. Actually, they used to fight with Israel. And so this is the story. 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 1. It says, the king of Aram had great respect, admiration for Naaman, the commander of his army, because through him the Lord had given Aram great victories. But though Naaman was a mighty warrior, he suffered from leprosy. So Naaman he's a really good general, he's a really good fighter, he's all of these things, but his life is in danger because he has leprosy. He has a skin disease. Now, leprosy was incredibly dangerous. One, because it's kind of like it's a skin disease that kind of eats away at your skin, but it also eats away at your feeling. And what can happen is you would get injured and you won't even notice that you're injured. And so the injury just gets worse and worse and worse. And a lot of people with leprosy would end up like losing fingers or losing toes or with giant gashes that wouldn't heal, right? And so this is, we can all agree, this is a moment where he needs help. But at that time in history, there was no cure for leprosy, which meant unless God does something, he's going to die from this. Unless God does something, his life is ruined. Even though he had all this great stuff, even though he was great, even though he had a lot of money, didn't really matter. He needed God. He needed God to do something, to intervene. And sometime during that, there was an Israelite girl who said, I wish Naaman would go to Israel, because if he goes there, there are people that could heal him. And Naaman goes, wait, what? There are people that could heal me in Israel? So he goes, I'm going. The king of Aram says, I want you to go. I want you to go. I want you to take whatever you need. I want you to, you go, because we need God to move. We want to see God do something. We want to see God change you. Could I have somebody grab the door back there? Let her in. Thank you. All right, so we want to see, he wants to see God move. He wants God's help. He wants God's power. And so he goes all the way to Israel. And then what happens is he gets to Israel and he doesn't know who he's looking for. Can you imagine, I mean, I know you can. How many of you have ever been sent into the grocery store by yourself and you were like, where on earth am I supposed to find stuff? They even have signs and I'm still like, I have no idea. Where do you even find jelly? JK, that's not my problem. I do the grocery shopping in my house. Whoa! All right, so he shows up to a whole country. He has no idea where he's supposed to go. And somebody says, wait. In 2 Kings chapter 5, verse 8, there's a prophet named Elisha. And it says, when Elisha, the man of God, heard the story. See, Naaman had gone to the king, and the king was so distressed that he ripped his clothes. He was so confused. He was like, I don't know how to help you. But Elisha heard about this story. Elisha was a prophet. Elisha spoke with God and heard from God and was used by God. And so he says, hey, tell Naaman to come to me, and he will learn that there is a true prophet in Israel. So Naaman went with his horses, with the chariots, and waited at the door of Elisha's house. Now imagine, here's the thing. He's traveled to a whole other country. He came from out of country because he knows God's going to heal. And then he gets there, and the prophet goes, we've got the answer. You just got to come to my house. Oh, yeah. Naaman's getting excited. He brings everything. He shows up. He's like, all right, I'm ready to get healed. And it says he's waiting. He's waiting at the door. And he's ready for God to heal him. And he thinks he knows, like, okay, Elisha's going to come out, and then he's going to pray for me, and I'm going to be healed. That's exactly what he's thinking. But this is what happens. Elisha sent a messenger out to him with a message. Go wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan River. Then your skin will be restored, and you'll be healed of your leprosy. But Naaman became angry and stalked away. I thought he would certainly come out to meet me. I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy, call on the name of the Lord his God, and heal me. Naaman is ticked. He goes, wait, I traveled all this way, and you told me that God was going to heal me, and then you said, come to my house and you'll heal me. And guess what? Elisha doesn't even come outside, doesn't even come to the door. He sends somebody. Elisha's in the back room busy playing Roblox, and he's like, hey, somebody go tell him to bathe in the Jordan River. Disrespectful. And Naaman is mad. Let me tell you why he's mad. He's mad because he needs God's help. He knows God can help him. But it doesn't look like God is helping him. He's mad because he knows that God is the only solution. And he knows that only God can make a difference. And yet at this moment, he doesn't understand what's happening. And I think there are plenty of times where we also want God to move, need God's help, and we go, God, what's happening? Why is it happening like this? So before we get into the rest of the story and see what God does with this, we're going to take a couple of minutes just in our tag group and talk about Naaman, the dark, some of these other things. We'll be back in a few minutes. What am I holding? A receipt. There it is. There it is. Now, it is a coffee receipt because Josiah was in first service. And then, but honestly, I was looking at my receipts over the last few days, and it is mostly coffee. It's, I know. But I was out of town, and so I ended up drinking a ton of coffee. If we look back at this week, I had Miles Away coffee, and Foxtail coffee, and Loyal coffee, and Wayfinder coffee, and then Southwest Airlines coffee. Like a lot of coffee over the last few days. But the receipt is proof, right? It's proof that of the things that I bought. It's proof of what I care about. It's proof of this. This week I got to go to the movies, and so my receipt is proof that I saw the movie, right? I mean, it's this thing that I could look back on. How many of you have ever saved like a ticket before? Maybe like a concert ticket or a movie ticket or an event ticket, or you saved something and you were like, oh, this is really cool. This is this kind of thing. Why do we do that? Well, because it's a reminder of what's happened before. And I think there's moments where when it comes to God, we need some receipts. We need some places and things that we can go, oh, I remember what God has done before. I remember where God showed up when I wasn't sure what he was doing. I remember when God showed up and I was curious. Or we're in those moments where we go, God, I don't understand. We can look back at the receipts and go, but I do know what you can do. I don't understand right now, but I do know what you can do. See, what happens for Naaman is he's so mad. He traveled all that way. He did all that work. He spent all this money to get here, to get healed, for God to move. And this guy just says, hey, why don't you go into a river? And he's confused. He's like, this doesn't really seem like God. This doesn't really seem like what I thought it would be. So verse 11, this is where we ended last time. Naaman became angry, stalked away. I thought he would certainly come out to meet me. I expected him to wave his hand over the leprosy, call on the name of the Lord his God, and heal me. And that seems like a great miracle. That seems like something that God would do. He says, but aren't the rivers of Damascus, that's where he's from, the Abana and the Pharpar, aren't they better than any of the rivers of Israel? Why shouldn't I wash in them and be healed? So Naaman turned and went away in a rage. At this moment, he doesn't understand what God is doing, and so he wants to give up. And J-Box, I need you to understand something. When you question whether God can be trusted, you need to remember what God has already done. You need to know when you're in this moment where you're wrestling through what is supposed to work, what is supposed to happen, what is God supposed to do. You need to remember that God is faithful, that God is true, God keeps his promises, that God cares about you. You need to remember the good things of God, what he has done before. See, in this moment, Naaman starts to leave. He starts to go away, and it says that the guys that are with him go, wait, what if we just try to listen? I know it doesn't make any sense, but what if we listen? I know it seems crazy. It seems way too simple. It seems weird. It seems wrong. Go in the river 7 times? What does that even mean? I know this doesn't seem like something that makes sense, but what if it's what God wants you to do? They go, Naaman, wouldn't you have done something crazy? I mean, like, if the prophet had come out and been like, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to stand on your head, rub your belly, say the alphabet backwards, and then you will be healed. I bet Naaman would be like, all right, bet. Right? But instead, he gets mad. His friends go, you got to listen. You got to try it. So Naaman goes, okay, let's try it. So he goes down to the river called Jordan. Some of you might recognize the name of that river. That pops up later. It's where Jesus gets baptized. Ooh. It's where a miracle has already occurred in the story of Joshua and the Israelites. They go down to the Jordan River, and it says he dipped himself into the water, and after the 7th time, he came out. Now, here's what's amazing. First time he goes under, no change. 2nd time, no change. 3rd time, nothing. 4th, nada. 5th, still not a thing has happened. 6th time. And then it says, after the 7th time, it was all gone. Now, this is incredible, but it's a moment that I think is amazing for us. It says that Naaman was so overwhelmed that he called out, now I know that there is no God in all the world except in Israel. He was so overwhelmed, so overjoyed. He goes, oh man, this is God. Moments ago, he was angry. Moments ago, he was confused. Moments ago, he didn't understand what God was doing. But at the end of it, he goes, wow! God. There are going to be moments in our lives where you have no understanding of what God is doing, and it's going to feel like it's a shadow. You're going to feel like you're in a shadow. You're going to feel like this is the thing, and sometimes you feel like you can't talk about it. There's going to be moments where you have a question, you have a concern, there's something you've been praying for. Yeah, my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer, and do you know what my first response was? To pray for him. Why? Because I wanted him to be healed. And I know that the Bible says that pray for the sick and see them recover, and so this is what I want. This is my hope. This is my prayer. Praying for my grandfather to be healed. And I remember spending Christmas with him. And even though he was sick, it was incredible because every day that we were hanging out with him, he would leave his room. He'd come out in the wheelchair and he'd come and he'd spend time with us. And it was simple things, but through that whole vacation time with my grandfather, I remember my grandma saying, man, I haven't seen him like this in months. I haven't seen him like this. And we were going, yes, God, this is awesome. This is awesome. About a week later, we got the call that he passed away. And there's these moments where you go, God, wait, what are you doing? God, I don't understand. I thought I was getting better. I thought this was, God, I don't understand. And I think there's going to be moments where there's something that happens and you go, I don't understand, God. And J-Box, I need you to understand something. You don't have to be afraid of those shadows, because it's okay to not understand. It's okay. There's going to be mystery in life. There's going to be mystery in the things that God's doing. There's going to be mystery. There's going to be things that you don't get. There's going to be things that you hoped for. And you might not understand it. You might not get what God's doing. Naaman doesn't understand. He's going, God, I don't understand what you're doing. I don't know why this is happening. It doesn't make sense to me. I think there should be a better way. I think there's got to be an easier way. I think there's got to be a holier way. I think there's got to be a more normal way. I think there's probably got to be a more extreme way. I think there's got to be something else other than this. And Naaman goes, I don't get it. I just don't. And I need you to know that it's okay. It's okay that you don't have to fear the shadow, because God is light. In those moments where you have a question, where you're wrestling, where you're wondering, where you're curious, remember the light. What do I mean by that? I mean, we have to look at the things that God has already done. When you have that moment where you go, God, I'm not understanding what's happening right now, but I remember what you've done. God, I don't understand what's happening. Here's an example of this. Here's an example. My grandfather passed away from cancer. I don't understand that. But you know what? I have a friend of mine who had cancer, and we prayed for him every single day, and he got healed. You know what I remember? I remember in those moments, God, I remember what you've done. I remember that you showed up. I remember that you made a difference. There are other times that I have questions and I go, wait, God, why would it happen like this? And I don't understand. But you know what, God, I remember the things that you've done in my life. I remember how you've changed me. I remember who you are. In many ways, what's really essential for us as Christians is to keep your receipts. What I mean by that is to have a list of things that you remember that God has done. And let me just say something. Because some of you this morning, if you're being totally honest, you would go, I don't know that I have any stories. Let me tell you, the Bible is fully, completely a book of God's receipts. And so if this morning you're going, I don't know if God has done anything for me, let me tell you something. The entire Bible is story after story after story of God saying, hey, look what I did. Hey, look what I did. Hey, look what I did. The book of Revelation says that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. And if you're familiar with the way that Maverick City does it, they say, which means that what God has done before, he can do again. So in those moments where maybe you go, hey, I don't have a story, guess what? The Bible can tell you how good God is. And you might also have stories where you go, oh, I remember who God is. And I remember what he's done. And I remember this. And guess what? There might be a moment that you run out of stories. And guess what? You need some other people in your life. Because I can tell you, your leaders have receipts. Maybe your parents have receipts. Maybe your friends have receipts. Maybe there's people that you know that go, oh, I remember this. And even when you're in the shadow right now, God's done more.